if people in the community, it probably wasn't immorally wrong back then. But I agree.
But you're a prophet.
Okay, no. So,
Right?
yeah, so that's where he's coming from.
There's
He's meant to be an
different
example
people and that prophet.
for time.
Yeah.
But then why would he do it in that time?
People were already.
Did your gurus
and the
own
culture
slaves?
already shifted from age.
No.
Did they sleep with kids?
And the
Did
standard,
they sell slaves?
Each at that time.
No.
The
Did
standard-
they war and kill people?
They killed people.
Did they war and kill people? Did they start wars and kill people?
Started from like
It was only in defense.
We're here in England, right? There's many old buildings here that are hundreds of years old. For example, St. Paul's Cathedral. I've been to the top of the spire. They have doors up there. But do you know how tall the doors are? This tall. Now, why is this? It wasn't for kids, but it was for fully grown men who were working on the building. So if only 500 years ago, the average height of a man in Britain was 5'5", can you imagine in the desert 1400 years ago how big a 9-year-old would have been?
in my country, right?
Well, no, wait, the Sims though. Okay, you. So, 1,000 years ago, you got a name?
I've got a name, bro.
What's your name, brother?
Ali.
Ali. I'm David, right? Now,
Don't record me, man. I don't want to be in this camera stuff. Bro.
don't record it. Now, Ali, you are trying to tell me that 1,000 years ago it was okay to marry a 9-year-old, but today it's not, right? Now, there's two problems with this. 1,000 years ago,
Yes, go on.
1,000 years ago, as you were aware, dietary restrictions, right, were a little bit more difficult back then. You didn't have ample access to meat and fish and greens, depending on where you lived. So now, if you're telling me that even back then, when people mostly ate grain, for example, if you were in Europe, that back then it was okay for you to marry them, when in fact they will be more malnourished than a 9-year-old today. And my friend, you're incredibly wrong. They'll be tinier than a 9-year-old today.
That's your understanding.
Okay,
Like I said,
now,
I put it to bed. If the prophet had enemies, people would have called him names, him getting married. This is it. That puts the whole
people
thing to
did
bed.
call him names and he killed them as a result.
What? They called him what?
They called him many names
Okay.
and he had them
Right,
killed.
they called him many names,
right?
but did they ever call the P word? Did they
Now,
ever call him P word? No.
how do I
You find
know?
that, bro. I'll come
No,
to finger.
that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter what they called him. It matters what he
end of the day,
did,
I'm not having
right?
this discussion.
Again,
If you
I
can't
don't
understand-
care about Muhammad. I am asking you, is it okay ever to marry a 9-year-old?
How was that? Now you're saying ever. Now you're looking at the whole thing.
Is it ever
from
okay?
The beginning of the world.
Is
to
it ever
now.
okay?
What,
Is it good practice? Is it encourageable? Would you do it?
I can't answer that. How am I going to answer
Alrighty.
that? How am I going to
I
answer
say
that
it's
in the
wrong.
beginning? Because laws were different back then.
I say it's wrong.
That's fine. But I'm telling you, laws were
So
different back then.
I, for example, will not
What's the law of a
encourage
girl to get
it.
married in this country?
I will not encourage it.
Okay. What's the
Right?
law in this country?
Okay, so when you're factoring the age of marriage into law, right? We at least consider the opinion of health professionals. No health professional will tell you that at the beginning of puberty for either a boy or a girl, that is a good idea for them to get married. Why? Because they're embarking on a 10+ year development cycle that will then end in their 20s. So nobody will tell you to get married at the beginning of a cycle.
Like I said, man, you're taking this thing to another thing. I'm telling you, you don't know how.
What do you want me to say? Okay, now,
Okay, what? Okay, what's the law in this country?
to delve very quickly into Islam, right? So you're telling me, I don't know. Wait, one second. You mean yesterday just now? You said I don't know what it was like back then. Okay, fine. Let us say, for brevity's sake, that every single person back then married 2-year-olds. If Muhammad is the prophet of Allah, why is he joining them in their bad behavior?
Okay, so now what's your question? Now you're saying if they will get married 2 years old, would that be okay?
No, my question is, if everyone was doing it back then, but it's not encourageable today because we know it is wrong and dangerous for the girl or the boy to do that, if they were all doing it and acting immorally in that time period, why would Muhammad join them?
Why would he join them if
Acting immorally.
It was
Yeah, but
immoral.
again, you're doing that thing where you're comparing the time.
Muhammad
back
is
then
supposed
and now.
to
You're
be
doing that thing
the
again.
best example for the Ummah for all time,
He
That's
is.
right.
including today.
He is, but you're doing that thing. You're going back 1400 years ago, 1500 years ago. You're comparing.
The Quran tells me to do so.
9 years old. Where are you from? Are you from UK, man? Have you seen people in other countries? How girls are in other countries?
It's not good, it's bad.
Be quiet,
It's bad.
honestly, you-
It's bad. It's bad.
You should look at. A 9 years old in another country, in a third world country,
no,
is
no,
mature than a girl.
No, wait a second. Wait a second. Ali, Ali, here is the issue. Yes, maybe potentially in other countries there might be girls and boys.
It's like
Ali,
answering, but you're going back to
Ali,
the same question.
Ali, in certain countries in the world, there may be girls and boys who have to assume higher responsibility because of circumstances they can't control. However, development-wise, they don't grow faster if you're in, like, I don't know, like somewhere in India compared to here.
Honestly, how do you know the development back then? It was different. How do you know about all this stuff?
A 9-year-old,
So,
a 9-year-old.
so wait.
Yeah, but I'm saying development
Okay.
wise. He said about
Wait.
development. How do
A
you know?
9-year-old's a 9-year-old.
Look, who can
0 to 9.
1,000 years ago, were they
how do you know
humans?
development
1,000 years
from 9
ago,
years old?
were they humans on the planet?
9-year-olds were 16-year-olds 1,000 years ago.
No, I'm not.
You're justifying it. You're justifying
I'm
it.
not just.
Ali.
I'm not justifying it. You don't understand what I'm saying.
Ali,
You
1,000
can't-
years
you can't
ago.
go all the way- You can't rewind all the way 1,500 years
because
ago.
there were
A 9-year-old
9-year-olds.
was a 9-year-old the way it is today.
Yes.
How do
It
you
was
know that?
even worse.
Okay, do you have
They
any
were
proof of
even
that? Do you have
tinier.
any proof of that? So there you go, mate.
Brother,
What was
brother,
proof of that?
What was
brother.
a 9-year-old 2,000 years ago?
I don't know. You
Brother.
tell me.
A 9-year-old.
Goals.
I don't know the answer, but you know. What in the Bible
I-
says the 9 years or 2,000 years ago.
I can give you an example.
I'm not coming
There
from
you go.
religious.
So
Ali.
don't say
I'm
anything,
talking
mate.
about biology,
There you
bro.
go.
A
If you
9-year-old
don't have an
2,000 years
answer,
ago,
just
Ali.
a 9-year-old.
Just
A
be
9-year-old.
respectful.
Ali, I can give you an answer very
It's a
easily.
9-year-old. A 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, yeah, in 5,000 times, if they're 9 years old,
Yeah.
they'll be 9 years old. It doesn't matter.
And you don't think the mindset is going to be different?
The mindset doesn't
9-year-old
matter.
is 9.
It doesn't
How
matter.
do you know that?
He's
How do you
playing
know
with
that?
What do you
goals.
mean?
It doesn't matter.
Anyways, I'm going
How
to
old are you? How old are you?
Ali,
How old are you? How old are you?
It doesn't matter.
How old are
It's
you?
irrelevant.
How old are
Let me
you?
answer.
How old are
Would
you?
you marry a 10-year-old girl?
How do you know how old you
About
are?
10 years
I've got, he's got to ask me a question. Would
How do you know how
marry a
old you are?
5 years old?
I will never do that. I'm not
Okay,
doing
there you go then.
Would you marry a 9-year-old?
Again, you're doing that thing.
I'm
he
asking you.
already
I'm
said
gonna
no.
say no
He
to
already
it.
said no.
Because time has changed, but back then, my
Okay.
brother, it was normal. It was a normal longevity of
Can't
all
see
this
that,
stuff.
bro.
Yeah, that's
No,
fine.
no,
That's
no,
fine.
no,
If you don't think it, that's
All
fine.
right, Ali.
I'm telling you, that's how it was
That's
back then.
Nowadays,
right?
nowadays,
I see a
transgender
9-year-old
is
as a
normalized. Is that
9-year-old.
okay?
Look it up in history. Longevity back then, people
And
didn't
history
live
will
that
tell me a
long.
9-year-old 2,000 years ago was 16.
People are very long.
Ali,
Longevity, do you understand
you
the
don't need to
The
defend
girls
this.
were getting married at a younger age.
Yeah,
Right?
so?
Yeah. So,
Still 9.
yeah, see, you're doing that thing again, 9 years old. Again, you're comparing the time back
can't
then.
get away
and now.
from
You don't
You
need to
asked me, would I
defend
marry a
this.
9 years
You're
old
born at
today?
0.
Would I marry a 9 years old today? Of course not. But back then it was normal. And I brought it to bed and I told him, did the Prophet have any enemies? He goes, yes, the Prophet had enemies. So how come none of the Prophet ever called him a pedophile? Because it was normal, my friend.
I'm not
That's
years ago.
not
I'm not-
good.
Listen, are you English? Are you English, my friend?
That's not a good argument.
100 years ago, yeah, girls in this country.
That's not a good argument.
Alright, Christianity, Islam, put them aside.
Because technically, Muhammad had
in
slaves,
this country,
and none of his enemies ever called him a slave owner.
that's a different topic.
No, it's the same thing, right? No, again,
I
just
heard that
because
9-year-old
no
was a
one
9-year-old.
called him out for his bad behavior doesn't mean he didn't do it.
There's a difference.
You know, you're talking about hadith. I don't know about
The only
hadith.
reason I
Don't
said
they
something
divide
is
us?
because I heard a
Are you
9-year-old.
someone
Ali.
who knows? When
No, I don't know about
messing
hadith and
up.
stuff like that.
Ali, we can come to a very easy end on this, right?
It's not the same.
You
I
don't
know
have,
know hadith and all that.
You should be. You're meant to.
Ali,
Sunnah.
it's this
You never
simple.
think about the
You
creation.
don't have to
You
defend
know
this.
Sunnah, you meant to obey the
If I
Sunnah.
tell you I don't know something, I don't know something. But at least I'm respectful.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I don't
This
know
is why he's-
something.
he's-
But I'm not going to make up lies like you guys do.
We're not making up lies, Ali. These all come from your own sources.
Right?
Right?
know
Ultimately,
who-
Ali,
you're asking me
it's
questions, right?
simple, Ali.
He's asking me
You don't have to defend this. You don't have to, right? You can simply say it's wrong. It's fine.
Look,
So I'd say so.
100 years ago, yeah?
I'm not.
You're giving hadith.
looking
You
at
want me to give
religion,
you?
bro.
You want me to quote your
saying a
Bible?
9-year-old
You want me
is a
to quote something from the
Go,
Bible?
go for it if you want to. That's fine.
Stick with one topic. He's asking me a question.
Married.
That's fine. Look, I don't expect you to understand that, right? Fine, right? I'm telling you what it is. That's it. It is what it is.
Here's the problem, Ali.
We're going
You're
around in circles.
defending something
You're
that's
not circling, you go
indefensible,
around in circles.
right?
That's where it is.
You're not supposed to defend this stuff. It's clearly bad, right? So just because you follow a person who
comparing
did
the
these
time
things,
from that time.
okay. Now, here are the two problems with that. Your Quran tells me to do this. Your Quran tells me that Muhammad is the best example for the Ummah for all time,
Okay.
including this time.
Does the Quran say
Right?
that you should get married to a 9-year-old today?
Okay, now, the Quran tells you that it's okay for you to divorce somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty. So, who doesn't go through puberty?
That's not what I asked.
People who are
Now
below
you're talking about
9 years
divorce
old,
and that. Right?
right?
You're asking about
No,
divorce.
so you see, if the Quran tells me that I can divorce somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty,
Yeah, go
what does that mean? That I'm marrying somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty. Normally, those are kids.
I don't know about all that stuff.
Okay,
right?
well,
let's stick
you
with
asked me if
something.
the Quran told you. I'm telling you what the Quran
No,
says.
but what was my
Okay.
question just then? That's you're talking about.
You asked
divorce.
me if the Quran allows you to marry a 9-year-old,
Yes.
and I am telling you that the Quran allows you to divorce somebody who hasn't yet gone through puberty. So, what would be the primary cause for somebody not going through puberty yet? They haven't reached that stage in the development.
Yeah, but the main thing, look, I
Right?
get that, right?
Okay.
But you're missing the main.
So,
point.
Ali, again, I'm trying to tell you, you don't need to defend this. It is clearly wrong. It is clearly evil.
Listen, I'm not
When-
defending because I'm a Muslim. I'm not defending.
Well,
because
you
I'm a Muslim.
you
I'm
are.
defending this because
I
it's just
guarantee
logic,
you,
my friend.
if
It's logic.
you take a poll
It's
of
logic,
people,
my
right,
friend.
who aren't Muslim, 0 of them will defend this. But somehow, when you get to the
would give it
Muslims,
0.
they all want to defend it.
Listen, even
Do I have any non-Muslims here by any chance? Anyone? Is it okay to marry a 9-year-old?
Sorry?
Is it okay to marry a 9-year-old?
back
Okay,
then,
cool.
Back then.
All right,
That 9 years old today. I'm saying back then.
Is it okay to marry a 9-year-old 10,000 years ago?
Without religion being involved or anything. Yeah, this is just age. We're just talking about age.
How do you
If I marry a 9-year-old 10,000 years ago, right, and then I sleep with them, and then they get pregnant, right, the likelihood of them dying is really, really high.
I'm not agreeing with him.
No?
but
I'm just saying-
10,000 years ago was a long time.
It was
So
different.
I haven't gone any long. But I'm not
The
agreeing.
the
with
problem,
him.
so now, the problem with 1,400 years ago or 10,000 years
But
ago,
I get your point because they see him as a role model that's timeless. So I get that point of view.
so
yeah.
man off. Simple,
But for
simple.
me, it's not like some behavior I'd follow.
Transgender.
Definitely
It's
not.
okay. It's good to do it. Just
Simple.
It's okay
Yeah, I mean,
to
the church.
Simple.
Do you have a problem?
That's it.
We don't agree
Yeah.
with that.
But unfortunately, because he's a Muslim, he has to defend this stuff.
LGBT thing group into them.
That's all.
You see what happened?
And I would hate to be in that scenario.
You don't know anything about it.
We're not violent.
I would hate to be in that scenario. That's
I'm
horrible.
saying, you're missing the point.
And,
if they're
Ali,
bringing all these drag
then-
queens and that dancing in your church, right? You guys should do something. Well, of course you're going to say you don't agree with
not
it.
agreeing with this
I could do the
kind of
same thing. We don't agree
We
with
don't agree
it.
with the point.
But the thing with us, right? We
Drag
have
queens, where do we go?
Anyway, he's asking me something else about it.
The last thing I'll say on this, Ali, is
It's fine, we
the
could
problem
agree to
remains.
disagree. We could
Well,
agree
no. Here's the issue. If you go back further in history, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, you will find that people were very, very malnourished and tiny, right? Do you want to have proof of this? For example, we're here in England, right? There's many old buildings here that are hundreds of years old. For example, St. Paul's Cathedral, right? The higher you go in St. Paul's Cathedral, the older it is, right? Because it's been like redeveloped multiple times. I've been to the top of the spire. They have doors up there, right? But do you know how tall the doors are?
Tell me.
This tall. I had to bend down to go inside of it, right? Now, why is this? It wasn't for kids, but it was for fully grown men who were working on the building. So if only 500 years ago, the average height of a man in Britain was 5'5", can you imagine in the desert 1,400 years ago how big a 9-year-old would have been?
Not really. Not really, because there was another
there
period.
is not
According
much
to Islam,
to
there was a period where there was of the giants. There was in the time of one of the prophets.
Make
there was a time of
believe.
giants, right?
That's all make
That's fine,
believe.
but that's
That-
not religion,
that's
right?
make believe, right?
But also,
That's make believe.
Also, our prophet, man.
Because
used to point out-
show me
Well, let me
one giant bone.
But let me
One.
tell you, right? Do you know anything about Umar? Right? Umar was a big guy.
Yeah, a big guy in his time was probably like a small guy in our time because they didn't have ample access to foods and proteins that would let them grow large. For example, even today,
No, but-
are Arabs
but
the
you're-
biggest people on the planet? Even today? No.
No.
So imagine even back then. It's even worse.
Well, you can't say that as a whole thing. Like people. Like,
What causes growth? Nutrition.
Yeah, I know, but you can't say as a whole thing that people was tiny back then. You
They
can't say
were
that.
probably very, very
I
small back
disagree.
then.
I disagree with that. But anyways. that's
Okay.
fine.
Were any of the
We don't-
Sahaba 7 foot tall? Any of them? Any? This is just one.
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. You know why?
But because we don't have everything of how tall would this person. That's not the point.
Is
of the
there
whole,
any reference? Was any of them as tall as a camel?
I don't know
Anything?
about stuff like that, about hadith and stuff. Like that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
The problem, my friend, is that wherever you go, even when you supposedly have Muhammad's clothes in museums in Saudi Arabia,
Yep.
tiny.
Yep. I wouldn't say it's tiny, but okay.
Well, for a fully grown man, right? You're basically probably bigger than him. Likely, he was probably 5'5" or below.
No, it wasn't.
He likely was.
It wasn't.
How
But,
tall was
okay.
he?
I don't know how tall he was, but he wasn't below 5'5" or 5.
How would you know that? That was probably
No, but
like average back then.
We're going back then.
Okay.
You're going to
now,
one person.
now,
If it's not
my
him, then
my,
I
over,
don't think
my
that.
overall point will be that if you go back further in time, people were tinier. So if you go back further in time and you're marrying 9-year-olds, that's even worse.
So you think 9 years old back then was small?
Was even tinier, even more malnourished, even
right,
more
that's
unhealthy than a 9-year-old today.
Because of the doors back then was small.
That's just one indicator of how big men were. Men, not even girls. Men.
According to us, thing, it wasn't. Men wasn't small. They weren't tiny. They weren't short. How about you? Everyone's different. Like in here, look, you're a tall guy, right?
Would I be this tall if I was born 1,000 years ago? Probably not. I wouldn't have the right amount of calories.
Yeah, but you can't say that you won't be that tall 1,000 years ago. It depends on your genes as well.
Look at the
It depends
average
on your genes
height
as
of
well.
anybody from that time period. For example, even here in this country, one of their very early kings was 6 foot tall, and they called him a giant because he was 6 foot tall. 6 foot.
6 foot what?
6 foot. That's it. Today, who would you call a giant who's 6 foot tall?
Well, it depends, doesn't it? 6'5", 6 foot.
Because everybody else
7 foot
was
maybe,
way
yeah.
smaller than him, and now the standard has risen. So now for you, 7 foot tall is giants. So again, you do not have to
I mean, you can make
defend
a
the
good point. I'll
idea.
give you that. That's a good point.
Okay.
But like I said, back then, 6 foot, it was considered a giant, right?
Yes,
Listen,
and
let me
this
just say I
was
agree.
in,
Let's just say I
this
don't
was
agree.
in the 1000s.
Okay.
Right? So you don't have to back up the idea or defend the idea that somebody slept with a 9-year-old and back then it was a good thing. It was a bad thing then.
Yeah.
It was a bad thing then. It's a bad thing today. So if you're participating in it and I am meant to follow you as an example for all time, I can't do that.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying that you could agree to disagree, right? It's up to you. If you want to believe that, that's fine. But like I said, if no,
Nah, you know what? I'll be honest. I agree with him, but I see where you're coming from. If people in the community, it probably wasn't immorally wrong back then. But I agree.
Well, you're a prophet.
Okay, no. So,
Right?
yeah, so that's where he's coming from.
There's
He's meant to be an
difference between
example
people and a prophet.
Thank you. That's
no,
fine.
for time.
Yeah.
But then why would he do it in that time? And I see why he's asking that.
Yeah.
Because he's meant to be a timeless for everyone.
Because
Yeah.
I can give you examples of prophets in the Bible who their people were doing one thing and they didn't follow them doing it. So, for example, with Moses, his people worshipped idols. He didn't follow them and do it
yeah,
because everyone was doing it back then.
I'm with you.
Prophets
on that.
need to
I'm
stand
with
at a
you on
higher
that.
standard than everybody else.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
If anything was wrong back then, yeah. Like for example, Sodom and Gomorrah, right? We have the story very similar to that, right? So obviously that land was full of gay people, right? Homosexual people. So obviously it was wrong. So obviously God sent messengers and all that stuff, and then obviously the punishment came, right? Long story short, punishment came, and then obviously I don't know what you guys believe about.
Roughly
How
the
God
same.
destroyed, yeah.
Roughly the same.
Obviously, we believe the same thing, right? The whole land got destroyed, right?
But do you see
So-
what the issue is? Your example is basically telling me that if Muhammad was there at the time, he would have just done it as well because everyone was doing it.
When you look into it as well, when he asked, it was Abu Bakr's thing, and you talked about Aisha, right? Of course, right?
Aisha
When he
is
asked
the main
her
example.
hand in marriage, right?
She didn't say anything, apparently, and her silence was
Right,
seen as
but what-
compliance, which is even that's horrible.
So that's how you look at it, right?
And also,
Anyways,
she was
but
6,
also-
not 9, so it's even
yeah,
worse.
but when did he consummate the marriage? And
Allegedly,
Wait.
when she was 9.
Why-
However,
But why do you think it
there's two explanations according to your tradition. Number one was that Abu Bakr took a while to give him his bride price. And it took 3 years before that. And then the other one is that in some of your fiqh books, depending upon your madhab, it's okay to marry a child and then you can do certain activities with that child in preparation of getting them ready for consummation. And I'm not even going to say what that is, but it's exactly.
Well, I'm
It's
telling
nasty.
you, there's a reason why he
Nasty.
waited before he.
Yeah.
he
Well,
went ahead.
none of those reasons that I've seen so far had to do with the idea that she wasn't, that it was best for her health. Essentially, is why it's saying.
But can I ask something, right?
Go
Leave
ahead.
that aside, right? 100 years ago in UK, right? When
Yes.
guys were getting married to girls who were very young, what do you think?
Okay,
was that wrong too?
100 years ago, guys were not getting married to girls who were very young in the UK.
Yeah, maybe they're 10 years old, 11 years old, however old they were, but they were
Okay,
young. They were
so
young.
that's the first thing, right? It wasn't
Was that
happening that
wrong?
way.
Was that wrong?
And we have charters to even show you that wasn't happening that way. Now, over time, as we have learned more about human biology and the ways in which we develop, we have gradually increased the age of marriage or the age of procreation, right? Because we're finding out that actually Doing it earlier is not good for you. It's bad for your health, and it increases mortality, aka death, of both the child and the mother. Why do you think, for example, in the last 100 years, as we've been increasing the age of marriage / sexual activity, that in tandem, our population has skyrocketed? Because now people aren't dying anymore in mass from having
people have more longer life now.
right,
People live over 100 years
but
and stuff.
despite that, people aren't dying early anymore from childhood marriages. That activity is now relatively small compared to what it was 100 years ago, for example. So
But was that wrong?
it's
Was that wrong?
it's wrong.
Yeah.
It is wrong.
So guys,
And
English guys
To
are
be
with their
devil's
marriage.
advocate, I don't think that's the reason for why.
in order for populations to rise,
No, but because the population rise, I don't see what's that got to do with the people marrying them when they were younger.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
if you're marrying somebody when they're
no,
young,
I just mean there's not like a direct correlation.
there is. There is. So yes,
No, you could use it like it might be a factor.
yeah.
Like, but it's not like a firm-
Absolutely. Food, hygiene, medicine play a factor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
However, at the same token,
Yeah.
if you have all the food, all the hygiene, all the medical care you want,
Yeah.
if you're marrying kids and making them pregnant, it is still going to have a very high chance of ending either the mother or the child dying.
Yeah. No.
So even despite all those advances, if you're making kids pregnant, it's not good for you. The society.
For me, the reason why I wouldn't do it, I just on the inside wouldn't feel right.
It's
no,
nasty.
But my point is this: that I wouldn't even be thinking about all of that other stuff. The reason why someone wouldn't do it today is because you just feel it's wrong.
Because you have a higher moral standard than he does. That's why.
No, but then you said he agreed.
Matter of choice.
No. But he said he
No.
agreed he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So
Now,
you
Like,
can't say I have a
asked me
higher
the
moral.
question,
No,
would I
no,
marry-
no.
He said he wouldn't do it, yeah.
You
Right?
do.
Well, the other guy said, would I marry
Because
a 9-year-old today? I said no.
One second, Ali.
Of course you would.
Your standard of
Back then,
morality
it was normal.
comes from the
It was
gurus,
something that people
What
were
do you mean
doing
by
back
was
then.
no?
but his comes from Muhammad.
Okay. No, so you're basically comparing the gurus to Muhammad.
Yes.
That's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
yeah.
It's
It's incomparable.
It's a time
Okay, but
period.
that doesn't mean I got higher moral standards than him.
Thank you.
Well, that's a
No,
hierarchy.
it
That's a
does.
No,
because
because
you're-
no. What do them two?
That's a hierarchy.
What does Prophet Muhammad and the gurus have to do with me and him?
Because you're following the gurus.
No.
They're
No,
leaders.
that's them two compare each other.
Why
That's
do- why
cool.
do-
No,
well, I
no.
know this guy.
Exactly. I don't know him
No,
either.
brother.
That has nothing to do with me and him.
Brother, your standard
But you
of
have
morality
No, you can
is the
say
gurus.
that. No,
And
you.
his leadership.
It's not Muhammad.
seems
That's
to
what I'm
have a
saying.
better
So my
mind.
standard, for example, is
Sikh.
yes, right?
See,
But
Honestly,
still to this day,
I thought that's just a regional thing. Like because I was born there, my family was Sikh. That's why it happened. But what I'm saying is, I don't walk around emulating them. I could be a bad guy anyway. You know what I mean?
But then-
I believe they were better than me.
absolutely.
Okay.
So that's why they're your standard.
No. Let's be honest.
Right?
No offense to the Muslims. I think the gurus
What do
are
you mean by mature? That's my
it,
question. now. You said
what's it
back
called?
then.
Morally,
I understand
I would-
superior to Muhammad,
no,
absolutely.
no, maybe not the word superior, but I would rather follow them in my heart.
That's what I said.
I'd rather defend them in a debate. Is what
That's
my
what
point
I
is.
said.
Yeah. But I'm saying that's nothing to do with me and him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Then-
I'm saying that
I get
you
what
should
you're
not
saying.
fight about it. However, the reason why he's okay with this idea and you are not is because of the standard of morality. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, one thing
They
though,
say it. Well, no, they were
I
not
do.
beautiful.
The difference between me and him is he thinks Muhammad is the sole thing. But
False
I,
sign.
yeah. But I do agree with him that back then it might have been.
I understand.
Do you agree though? Yeah.
I don't.
But I can give
So,
you a perspective that I'll put it.
like I said before, I agree that it happened.
Yeah,
I
back-
agree.
A lot more back then.
I
yeah.
agree it happened. I disagree that it's correct.
The children of
And
I'm with
so do your gurus.
So do I.
belongs to the children.
Yeah, of course.
That's it.
Anyone of
Of
you
course, of
was
course.
I'm not making any other kind of arguments.
for harm.
Yeah. No. Fair enough. The only reason I was putting a span in the works is like when you said I got higher.
Standard of morality than he does. Yes, you do.
And for 600 years, people were already.
Did your gurus
and the
own
culture
slaves?
has already shifted from age
No.
Did they sleep with kids?
And the
Did they sell slaves?
Each at that time.
No.
The
Did
standard
they war and kill people?
They killed people.
Did they war and kill people? Did they start wars and kill people?
Started from like
It was only in defense.
But Muhammad took them back.
All right.